Hello pickleball friends. Thought I'd try to answer a question by making a video today. I've been asked a number of times recently, whether I'm at the pool or whether I'm at the fitness center or just walking around. The question is, when are we going to get pickleball courts here at Rapallo? Why is it taking so long? What is the committee doing? I haven't heard anything about pickleball courts. So I thought today I'd put together kind of a little outline of what we've done and where we're at and what needs to be done moving forward. So hopefully this answers your questions, or hopefully it doesn't create a whole bunch more, but anyhow, here you go. Starting back in December of 2023 or last December, the master board decided to put together small groups to look at improving amenities here at Rapallo. One of the small groups was pickleball. I volunteered to lead the pickleball group, and we started meeting in January. We started in January, had a few meetings, okay. So what I did to start with is I looked at around Rapallo. I identified all of the different pieces of property, anywhere we could sneak in a court or two or three or even four courts. I identified those areas around Rapallo. I didn't put any restrictions on it. I just said, is there physically square footage enough to be able to put pickleball courts in? I identified 7 different areas. Now, I'm not going to go through all those areas, okay, but what we did is we, as a group, the pickleball group, we got together and we went through each of those different areas, and we listed the pros and cons of each of those areas. Was there parking available? Was there amenities like restrooms and water? Was there electricity for lighting? All those kind of things we identified as either pros or cons for each of these different areas. In the end, only one area that we looked at actually had more pros than cons, if you will. So we basically narrowed it down from the 7 different areas around Rapallo, which included looking at the basketball courts, we looked at maybe converting tennis courts, all these different areas we looked at. Ultimately, it narrowed down to just one area that really had more positives than negatives. That area is the parking lot, which is right next to the tennis courts, and alongside the tennis courts, between the clubhouse and the little building that houses the trash hopper. So there is a section of parking lot there, which is typically used by the tennis players to park before they play tennis. So if we were to remove those parking spots, there would be enough room to put in 4 pickleball courts there, okay? So we looked at that, we talked about it, okay? And then we, again, identified the pros and cons, and it kind of met a number of the important issues, okay? There was room for 4 courts, which what we were looking for. There are restrooms nearby, obviously, with the clubhouse. There's water available. There's lighting. There's electricity available. There's a social area with the summer kitchen, which would be an area for people to wait, and socialize while they're waiting for their pickle game to start, much like they do from a tennis standpoint. So those are some of the positives, okay? Obviously, some of the negatives, or the cons, if you will, is that across the street from where these pickleball courts would go, are some villas, so some residential housing. And across the other side of the tennis courts, across the lake, is one of the terrace buildings, so there'd be residents there, okay? So anyhow, that's what we did. We identified that as being probably the best area within the community that we thought would be, advisable to put courts. Now, the next step, if we were to do that, well, the next step was we first brought that to the amenities committee, okay? I presented all these different ideas to the amenities committee, the overall committee looking at amenities, and again, we talked about it, okay? And they fed back what they were concerned with, the pros and cons as well, okay? So the next step we did, or that I did, was we contacted the Village of Estero, and we talked to a gentleman named Jim Hart, who is the Development Review Manager, okay? And we told Jim what we were thinking about doing, because if we put in these pickleball courts here alongside of the tennis courts, we would eliminate 28 parking spaces. And many folks looked at that and said that shouldn't be a big deal, because if you remember when we had the roofing project done, the far side of the parking lot was blocked off for roofing supplies for almost a year. And we seemed to get by just fine without that whole left-hand side of the parking lot. So anyhow, when we contacted Jim Hart from the Village of Estero and told him what we were thinking about doing, he said the first thing we needed to do was we needed to go back in the archived documents from when Rapallo was built and see what Lee County approved the number of parking spaces required. So we did that. We went back, and it took a while, but we dug through all the documentation, and we found out that when Rapallo was built, Lee County stated we needed to have 83 parking spaces. Okay, 83 parking spaces for the clubhouse. Turns out we actually have 84, so we actually have one extra parking space compared to what was originally required. Now, obviously, if we take away 28 parking spaces to put these pickleball courts in, that would be an issue. So when we talked to Jim Hart, we said, so then I called Jim back, and I said, okay, this is what we found. We found out we needed 83 parking spaces. We're looking at taking 28 away. You know, what do we do? He said, well, you have two options. First would be find another location within Rapallo where you could put these 28 parking spaces so that you net the same number of parking spaces. Well, that's very difficult. As you know, there's not much room around the clubhouse to be able to add 28 additional parking spaces. So the other option would be to go to the Planning, Zoning, and Design Board at the Village of Estero and ask for an exception to reduce the number of parking spaces here at the clubhouse. Okay, so that would be the next step. Now, if that's approved, if the Planning, Zoning, and Design Review Board approve that, which we have not went before them yet, okay, if they approve it, then it would go to the full council. Now, in talking with the council members over there, what I found out is that, believe it or not, the Village of Estero has a lot of jurisdiction when it comes to what we do here at Rapallo, especially when it comes to pickleball. Because so many people across the country have sued their HOAs, their condo associations, and their villages because primarily of noise associated with pickleball, that the villages have become very, very gun shy of allowing new pickleball courts to be built. So we would have to go before the village council, and they would ask for, or they would require a public hearing. So with that public hearing, what would happen is they would send out a letter to all of the Rapallo residents and all the residents in the surrounding communities to be able to come to the village during this public hearing. Each person would get 3 minutes, and they could say whether they were for it or against it, okay? And after everyone's had their piece, their chance to say whether they would like to see pickleball courts at Rapallo or not, there would be a vote by the village council. Now, if the village council voted in favor of it, then that would approve us putting in pickleball courts here at Rapallo. And if they didn't, obviously, it would be a done deal. Just like if the designing board did not approve the parking place issue, it would be a dead issue at that point. But assuming they approve it at the design board, and assuming they approve it at the village level, the next step would be to take it before the owners here in Rapallo. We would have to have a vote of all of the owners, okay? And if the owners approved it at that point, then we could proceed to adding these pickleball courts in. So that's kind of the long shot, the long story, I guess, of where we're at right now. There's a lot of hoops that we have to obviously jump through. Right now, I am in a waiting pattern waiting for the amenities committee to hold their listening sessions and their surveys and gather information from the owners to make a determination whether the owners in general here at Rapallo really want to have pickleball courts. Do enough owners at Rapallo want to have pickleball courts to warrant going to the zoning appeals board and then possibly going to the village council and then doing a vote to the owners here at Rapallo? Right now I'm waiting to find out what that looks like. If 5% of the community is all that wants to have pickleball courts, then I don't see the sense in going through all of that work to try to convince the village that we want to have it. If, on the other hand, it comes back that a very high percentage of people here at Rapallo would like to have pickleball courts within Rapallo, then I think it warrants going to the next phase, which is involving the village through the planning, zoning, and design review and moving on from there. So, long story, that's kind of where we're at, okay? Again, I hope this kind of answers some questions. Again, there's been nothing approved for pickleball courts. There's been nothing submitted to ask for approval for pickleball courts. We've just done a lot of research at this point, and that's where we stand. So, thank you for listening, and hope you have a great day.